just so that for everyone who isn't able to join, we're able to share that as well. Awesome. Okay, I will pass it off to Alex, who will talk a little bit more about Latinos in IO.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon. So I'm Alex Ochoa. I'm the co-founder of Latinos in IO. It's crazy to think that it's already been 3 years in September that we started Latinos in IO, and it's amazing to see our mission statement actually coming to life. 3 years ago, we actually had a meeting just like this one with all our collaborators and also with all our community group. And we asked them, what do you see our mission statement being? And this is what we all came up with, and together we're doing it. And this is amazing to us to see, obviously, our collaboration with everybody here, and the fact that we already started a mentorship program, and this networking that we're doing right now, as well as we're having our second annual conference coming up next month, actually. So we have a lot of exhibitors and networking opportunities in California, and just little by little opening up more and more things for ourselves. And here you see, obviously, right there, the pictures that are the last year, and just kind of seeing the fact that we're growing more and more. A piece of advice that I would obviously give a lot of you here is, if you are feeling this sense of like, I need to do more for my community, I need to, make sure that I'm networking and also understanding a lot more than just going to work. I need to do more. Please join our groups. Please join any group that you feel a connection with, and make sure to volunteer, because honestly, those things will come back to you later on. I've noticed that the things that I'm learning in just making Latinos in IO, I'm using at work right now, right? So these are things that are so important to just have in the back of your pocket. So trust me, it'll help you in the long run. And I'll pass it over to Macy.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here with you all this evening. My name is Macy Cheeks, and I'm the co-founder of Blacks in IO Psychology. If you haven't heard about us, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're dedicated to uplifting Black voices and experiences within the IO industry. We do that through continued education, mentorship, networking, and awareness building. As you can see on our slide, we have some goals that we've set out for our organization. So I'll run through those really quick, just so you all know a little bit more about what we aim to do. So we want to foster a community of diverse IOs and academics and practitioners, of course. We want to increase the presence of Black people in the IO industry. We want to increase awareness of the IO industry at educational institutions nationwide, but specifically minority serving institutions like HBCUs. We want to build that really rich pipeline of diverse and informed IO candidates. We want to promote a nationwide understanding of the unique experiences that Black people face in the workplace, and then serve as that vehicle to enable those conversations. And then the last thing we want to do is empower and equip our members with the tools and language to address the disparities that are unique to us. And so if you would like to get involved, please feel free to reach out to us. We have a conference coming up. We have a mentorship program. We have a scholarship program. Our information is down at the bottom of the slide. You can visit our website. You can follow us on social media platforms. Feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or you can shoot us an email. We're always happy to chat. Thank you all so much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amelia Dow. I am here representing My Mommy as an organizational psychologist on behalf of the author, Sevelyn Van Ronk, or Sevelyn Crosby. And the goal of the book was to create something that could explain IO to everybody in a way that everyone can understand. And out of that, we've been able to form these amazing relationships that have allowed us to come together at the IO community and collaborate. So we're just so grateful to be here. And if you're not already connected with us already, please check out our social media. And as a part of this panel, Sevelyn's offering a promo code. So if you're interested, please visit our website, connect with us on social media. And we always love hearing user and reader feedback.
Awesome, thank you. And then we have a lovely group of panelists for this evening. And would love to invite y'all to introduce yourselves prior to us getting ready for the panel. So Afra, if you don't mind, would you mind introducing yourself to the group?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the panel this evening. My name is Dr. Afra Ahmad. I am the director of the online Master of Professional Studies in Applied Industrial and Organizational Psychology program at George Mason University. And I'm hoping tonight I can be able to share some of the academic perspectives to complement some of all these amazing panelists this evening. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. And is it Shanequea?
Yes, it is. Hi, my name is Shanequea Harris. I am currently a division training manager at Krispy Kreme. I've been in that position for about a year now. Graduated last May from the University of West Florida, and I'm just really excited to be here and hope to share something that sparks something for someone. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, thank you. And Ryan, would you like to go next?
Sure, and how interesting is that, Shanequea? If I heard you correctly, you said West Florida? All right, so 12 years ago, that's where I completed my IO psychology as well degree from the University of West Florida. So currently I am based in Nashville, Tennessee, serving as the talent and leadership or organization development manager for one of the business units at Tractor Supply Company, which is our support center. So think about that, your typical corporate teams. So that's primarily the folks I support when it comes to anything leadership development needs. And I've been with Tractor for over 2 years now.
Great, thank you. And is it Anaid?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I look forward to speaking and hope that what I can share will be useful to everybody. And I'm looking forward to the breakouts and answering any specific questions folks might have. That seems fun.
Hi, I'm Clarice Larson. I'm the Director of Talent Insights at the Cleveland Clinic. If you're not familiar with Cleveland Clinic, it's the #2 healthcare system in the world. Our US locations are based out of Ohio and Florida, and we have over 70,000 caregivers and treat over 13 million patient visits annually. So my team provides data insights to the talent acquisition team, so specific to recruitment activities. We oversee talent acquisition technology, university relationships, and education. So as a part of the operations team, we really drive strategy and vision, help to identify wins and opportunities to ensure that Cleveland Clinic is the best place to work in healthcare and the best place to receive care. Outside of work, I look forward to creative time in the ceramic studio, hiking, and being a cat mom. And I graduated from Teachers College with my master's degree in social organizational psychology about 10 years ago.
Get down.
Awesome, thank you. Great, well, I'd love to get started with our questions. The first question that we have for you all, and you can kind of, whoever feels kind of compelled to answer first, go ahead. But our first question is, how did you get into the field of IO? What drew you to the field?
Okay, I can go. So for me, IO, like my undergraduate program, it didn't have an IO focus. So I came to it a little bit later. I was about to finish my undergrad degree in psychology, and I, was talking to professors about their experiences in grad school and PhD programs because I knew that eventually I would want to, and I spoke to someone about IO. It wasn't until much later because I was actually also working through undergrad at Krispy Kreme, and I had been there for probably 5 years at that point. I stepped into leadership and thought, how neat would it be if something that I learned in, if I had the knowledge to impact the people that I serve, my team members at that time, because I was a general manager, how neat would it be if I could impact them, at a higher level? And I thought back to that initial conversation with that undergraduate professor. Her name is Kelly at the university, Auburn University at Montgomery. And she talked about how she used her degree for the military to help with leadership. And that was a problem that we were really having, a problem that we are still back, coming up with plans to face today. And, as I grew more and more into that leadership role, I realized that focusing on the operational parts is great. It's how a business, pays its people. It's how it grows and sustains itself. But the people piece is so much more important. And after about a year as a manager, I decided, I think I'm going to go back and figure out how I can make a difference for those people at the level using a graduate degree. And, I kind of pivoted back towards a graduate degree after about 5 or 6 years out of the work industry, and came out of it and absolutely love what I do every day, helping people learn, grow, develop. And so it's definitely the best decision that I've made for myself so far.
That's great. I can go next. So I stumbled upon industrial organizational psychology as an undergrad. So similar to many folks in the room, I was a psychology major, thought I was going to do clinical counseling, joined a social emotional development lab, and was like, yeah, I'm going to go into this area and field. And I actually did my undergrad, master's, and PhD at George Mason University, and now I'm back as a program director and faculty member. But I was in the honors program in that first semester. Thankfully, they have faculty members come in from all different areas and concentrations of psychology. So someone from human factors, clinical, and IO. And so one day, Dr. Eden King, and I know Shannon knows her very well, but she came in and talked about diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace and how to make the workplace better, one study at a time. And from that moment on, I was really hooked and intrigued by that idea of having an impact on a large body of population, right? Everybody needs to work and so forth. And so religion is pretty central to my identity. And I mentioned that because as we have the sponsorship from Asians in IO, Blacks in IO, Latinos in IO, and all these groups, and someone mentioning even today about having a Native Americans Indigenous group, I think that's where the beauty of the field is and how to infuse some of our identities into our passions, into the work we do. So I remember going to Eden and saying, even though we're several years post 9/11 things, I don't see a lot of work on the experiences of religious employees, and that's something I'm really interested in. And that's how I got very excited about studying DEI, as I was able to, look at religious discrimination and religious diversity in the workplace for my undergraduate honors thesis and continue this work as a doctoral student. So that's how I was able to get into IO, was through understanding the passion and intertwined on both my identity and learning how I can make an impact on a large body of people.
Afra, I love that. I definitely would say oh, go ahead. No, okay. I would say probably like many of you, I also thought I was going to be a clinical psychologist back in the day. When I got to undergrad, that's the first time I also heard about IO psychology. It was one of my TAs actually was talking about how that's what he was studying for his PhD. And when I was thinking, we spend so much time at work, literally like 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. I was fascinated by the idea of just really applying psychology to organizations, large groups, and really understanding how we all can work to do things a little bit better. And especially when we think about why we work every day, I think when you hear about the passion that people have about making work better, I think IO psychology is one of the best ways to do that.
My story is really similar to everybody else's. I was working in human resources as an undergrad. And when I was talking to counseling services, they kind of noticed that in my resume and things. And they're like, have you thought about that? Because I was also going into the clinical side. I was in a lab working with foster youth and looking at mindful meditation practices with foster youth. And once I got into the clinic side of things, I went back to kind of my systems thinking is what I like to say. It is I was looking at the big picture, and people, the counselors were amazing. It was the structure. There was, a little toxicity. There wasn't enough training. And I went back to, that's HR. And then I went back to, oh yeah, they had told me about this IO psychology thing that I kind of ignored because I was going to be a, clinical psychologist. And so, and I found that is where my passion lies, in systems. But I also have a passion for helping people. That's where the clinical side came from. And so this is a way that I can do both. I am a returning, I didn't say this in my intro. I'm a returning student. So my gap between undergrad and graduate school was actually 8 years. So I'm a graduate student now at San Diego State. And I went back because, one, I always wanted to go back and do my master's. I want to keep going and doing a PhD. I'm on a different track than most, and into my PhD, I probably will continue that kind of slower pace on the academic side. The role that I left last, practitioner, was an HR director for a community college district. But I was a mom. I became a mom not about 6 years ago exactly. And what I found is that my identity as a mom and my identity, I'm also an immigrant, I'm a first generation, English as a second language. When I became a mom, the saliency of all of my other identities kind of came back. And I had found that in the workplace, I didn't feel that as much as when I was going grade school and even undergrad. Like when I was at school, all of those things were very salient to me. In the workplace, I could kind of focus on the work, and my identity kind of it wasn't that it didn't matter. It just, my work kind of spoke more than all of those other things. I could kind of be more myself, and my work was my work. When I became a mom, that changed. I all of a sudden was first a mom, and then a director, and then HR leader, and then everything else. And so that was my passion for coming back to getting the master's. So now I'm in a DEI role within the global team at United Healthcare Group, which is an organization of 400,000 employees. So I'm learning a lot right now it's an internship program. But I do want to go back full-time into the DEI space in general, and going back to the saliency and making sure that people can feel their more authentic selves at work. Because I felt that. I worked in a place where I was working at Ceron, as I said, and when I was very young, and I felt that. I felt like I could just be myself at work, and I genuinely thrived. And so I know what it feels like to have that. So I want to create that for other people. And my systems thinking and the little science part is just an extra part of what we add. I'll say that I was just asked in part of the internship, why IO, like, what is the IO? Somebody had an MBA, and they said, I looked at IO, but why did you choose IO, and what's different? And I said, well, that's the science. Like, an MBA is business. I'm going to help you with your data.
So I'll add to that. My story is a little bit different because I didn't know IO at all. So I did my undergrad back in the Philippines. So I was born and raised in the Philippines. And then when I moved to the US, so my undergrad was in political science. So psychology wasn't my background. But when I moved to the US, of course, you have to start from somewhere. So I started working in the hospitality industry. And then from there, got promoted to a point where I started helping and teaching and training my coworkers. Like, here's how to do X, Y, and Z. And then started looking, how do you influence? How do you motivate people? And then a family of mine really asked me, do you want to stay in the hospitality industry, or, do you want to pursue something else in the US? You're brand new as an immigrant. There's a lot of opportunities out here for you. And that's when, okay, so what's next for me? Nothing wrong with hospitality, but what can I do more if I won't go back to school? That's when I stumbled upon really University of West Florida, really with the whole intent of actually I was looking for masters in like hospitality and tourism. But as I read IO psychology, what is this 14-syllable agree. Like, it's so long, and it spoke about leadership, and maybe I'm not really the statistics person. Maybe that cringed a little bit when I saw that aspect of the curriculum. But overall, really with the purest intent, I'm like, well, I think I'll take a stab and really take a risk. So I'm saying that because if some of you are kind of, well, what now? I'm in the program and I don't know what holds, what's after. Be with that moment, experiment with that feeling, because that is okay. And then as you carry on in the program, or what's life after grad school, which is really what we're here for, I think you'll find that. And I think over the last 12 years, I'm continually finding, how is truly IO impacting the work, and how, what can I bring to that? So that's my story on how I ended up into the IO psychology program.
That's awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. For the next few questions, we'd love to kind of maybe hear just a couple of folks, since we know we're kind of short on time, but hopefully we can get some comprehensive answers here. So one of the questions that came up a lot is, what are the different types of jobs that IO grads can go into? So would love to kind of hear, the different types of jobs that you've seen, as well as we had kind of a question as well, kind of that distinction between a master's and a PhD. Do you need a PhD to be a competitive candidate? Are there distinctions in the types of jobs between that master's folks get versus PhDs? So would love to hear any insights y'all have on that.
I would say similar to Ryan, I didn't really know what I wanted to do right away. And I definitely want to emphasize that that's okay. And I think sometimes just knowing that you can sit in that uncomfortable state is okay. And it was really stressful to me at the time. And if I could go back, I would tell myself not to worry so much about it, because at the end of the day, how are you supposed to know what you're going to like at work if you haven't done it before, right? So I would say I would highly recommend taking any internships that you can get. Deciding what type of job that you'll want. Essentially, it's like leaning into what you're most curious about and what excites you the most. I would definitely recommend taking on any like projects that you hear come up, asking around any of your colleagues who might be working on something that you're interested in to say, hey, like, can I learn more about what you're doing? I was able to, I like lucked into, and then also made sure that I was letting my leaders know these are the things that I'm most interested in. So when an opportunity came up to lean into my like data insights area of excitement, I was able to step into that. And then eventually when there was more opportunity to go into more of a technology type role, just really making sure that you're being vocal about what your interests are, and really keeping in touch with like your colleagues and leaders for those opportunities.
I think one of the best things about IO is that there are so many different types of roles that are available to us. And I know for me personally, like originally going in, I was under the misconception that like, you go into IO psychology and you become an IO psychologist. It's a very big limit on exactly what we can do with the skill set that we learn, because it's so varied. I know, coming out of the program after I had, after graduating from the graduate program, I actually had my eyes set on a data analytics position. Of course, speaking to that, statistical mindset that, we kind of hone over the time in the program. But coming out of it, like it's the role that I'm currently in is supporting training for about 80 locations across the US. And to like, the funny part is it's the position that I wanted so badly before I actually went back to grad school. And so even though I came out thinking I'm going to be a data analytics professional, I kind of fell back into, where I was before I graduated. And I'm so happy that I did, but it just speaks to the wide range of roles that are available. And speaking of, of course, I don't think, some of us wouldn't be here if you needed a master's degree. So obviously I think knowing that there's, a lot of, it's up to you to make sure your journey is what you want it to be in IO. And, you can take it as far as you want, and that's great. Or if you're someone, a master's is fine too. And there's a lot of jobs that you can have with that as well. So I'm happy to be in a field where that's kind of the experience.
And I just wanted to add that as I'm talking to students, some of the things that I try to highlight is, the main sectors we can think about IO psychologists working in is 1, academia, 2, in government, 3, in consulting, whether it's internal or external consulting, and 4, practically any industry, right? We have IO psychologists in every industry. And I love that in our program at George Mason, I run the online program, we have individuals that already have jobs and are working full time in healthcare and IT, and they're trying to leverage IO knowledge and competencies to make their workplace more efficient and be able to use those competencies and help that organization succeed. And so one thing that I'd encourage everyone in this room is become a SIOP member. So that's our Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychology. And I'll share some resources and links, but one link that I'd like to share is this interactive space where you can go through and explore, these different sectors, and they have SIOP career study and executive reports. The other advantage that you all have as SIOP members is getting access to something called the SIOP salary survey. And then you will learn more about, the different pay that people have in a master's or PhD, the different competencies and so forth, where they're working and how that varies by location even, right? And so you'll have access to a lot of those opportunities as a SIOP member. But for now, I'll share some general resources that you all can get started.
Thank you so much. So we're going to do our last question before our breakout rooms. I know personally for me, I definitely needed this question probably 5 months ago. So is there anything that you can tell us to prepare for an interview or any job application process? Is there anything that you wish you knew beforehand?
I think for me, I'll jump in. It's any interview process, right? One, of course, you have to articulate what you want, right? Being able to Afra's point, or Dr. Ahmad's points about, what are the competencies that you can bring to the table? And sometimes that's hard to articulate, especially if you're just coming out of the grad school. So to some point, some folks already mentioned, what are the projects, right? What are the skill set that you can bring to the table? I think that's one. But second to me is because I'm in a different industry now. So I'm in retail. So Tractor Supply is a national, brand in terms of retail, but I was in healthcare for 10 years. So when it comes to applying, really understanding the business, right? So you probably heard that it's no different, like understand the culture, the mission before you jumping into that. What I do say though, don't come in with this assumption of that, this is IO psychology, I'm going to bring all the theory. And again, it depends on the role. Because for me, I cannot just simply articulate all the theories during the interview process because the other person may not understand that. So understanding the business, the language of the business even. So for you to do a little bit of research on your own. And I even encourage you, what are some of the strategy from a strategic perspective that the company, they're out there for sure, that start to hint like, if this is the lens that I have from, do they have leadership development programs? Do they have data insights in terms of recruitment? And maybe use that language as compared to really the theoretical perspective of IO that we typically learn, right? That we learn in school, but sometimes in a practitioner perspective, so that's the lens I'm bringing in, it may not necessarily work. So just want to give that.
I would absolutely say researching the company and the role, like Ryan is saying, is really important for sure. Understanding what they're looking for the candidate to bring to the table, what problem they're trying to solve by adding this person to their team. If you haven't heard of the STAR method, I would definitely look it up. It's essentially a behavioral interview question format that a lot of organizations will use because a lot of research indicates that, past behavior is the best indicator for future performance. So really being able to speak to a STAR, which is essentially the situation that you've faced, the task or the action that you took, and the result that you brought to the table. So a lot of the times I would recommend writing out responses and just practicing different types of stories and I think like when you search like what interview questions you might get, a lot of the times you can find lots of really great questions that you can practice and prepare for.
And what I'll add to that is a little bit of the mindset going into an interview or going into the application process is understanding it's like a little puzzle, right? So it's just if you think about the research stuff, you're just trying to match kind of the answer to the solution. And so kind of what Clarice was saying with what are they trying to solve, and does your perspective, how does your experience add to what they might how they're going to solve that. And so being able to speak on that during the interview, so just prepare, just be confident that you understand the problem. And even if you say the wrong little technical term, you're going to use, you can portray your expertise, and you could portray your knowledge the best way possible, more than anybody else can. And so be confident in your skill, be confident in your ability, be confident in your knowledge. And then that's really what's going to come across. And really, some points is if they allow you to take notes, write down the question so that you're looking straight at the question and making sure as you're speaking, you don't lose track of what you're saying or what you're supposed to be saying. Also remember that in the interview process, a lot of times, IOs are sought after. We have a unique set of skills. And so go in with that confidence, but also know that there's a power dynamic, and be aware of when that power dynamic switches. And so you on the front end are on the bottom side of the power dynamic. As soon as you get the offer, you're on the top side of the power dynamic. And that's when you want to make sure that you ask the questions about what opportunities do you have for me to get into data, or for me to get into whatever aspect or whatever type of project that you're really curious and really excited about. And so, but that's when you're going to ask those types of questions. Also looking into the culture and making sure it's a good fit for you, looking into the leadership and making sure that that's a good fit for you. So just being aware of that power dynamic and knowing when it shifts, and also being confident that it will shift for you. So you will get an offer and you will get an opportunity to answer those questions. Rely on all of your knowledge, as far as if somebody asks if you get an interview process that is not structured, that is not, all of the red flags that we know as IO psychologists, keep that in mind for yourself. And that doesn't mean that it might not be a place for you. It just means that you have to ask questions. And so sometimes we're eager to get the role, and we might accept something because we're excited about the pay or excited about the title, but listen to those red flags. That doesn't mean it's a no. It just means, hey, are there opportunities for me to ask questions? Are there opportunities for me to help kind of, with my expertise, help improve some of the processes that I see, or some of the red flags. But I would say make sure that's another key is don't ignore those red flags in the interview process. Make sure you ask about it.
Awesome, thank you. And we did realize kind of as the panel was going on that apparently the Zoom room has a capacity of 100, and we hit that. And so we had quite a few people who were trying to get in who weren't able to join us. So I'll just ask maybe one more question in our panel because this is the recorded part, just so that, everyone can get the most out of this experience before we move to the breakout groups. So in addition to kind of a lot of the insights that you all shared around like different types of jobs that are available, how to prep for the interview and the application process, but even as you're kind of searching for these jobs and going through that, I think, at least for me, I remember when I was starting to look, I was like, oh, like I know there's a ton out there, but how do I even go about looking for those jobs, right? Like, are there, like, where did y'all look? What search terms did you look for? Different things like that, just kind of, and how did you all start that process, or just even kind of like find out about the jobs that you're in?
I just want to first highlight networking. I mean, I'm going to let everyone else speak to the other experiences and where to look for that, but the students that I have on this call tonight, but I can't tell you how much networking is so important. IO is a small world. We may, it's a very, very small world. At PsyOp, all of us are smiling, seeing each other, but we're going to not only sessions and things like that. So first, like, network through the PsyOp conference. network through events like these. I know some of us were dropping in LinkedIn things. All of my co-panelists, I've already sent a LinkedIn invite because guess what? I'm going to follow up and say, hey, if you have jobs, because you all are applied people, send it to me. I'm a program director and I'll send it out to my student listserv. So that's another opportunity where I'm linking tonight. Those of you who are going to be in a breakout room with me, I'll be connecting with you all. Then I'll post some of those opportunities on my LinkedIn and you all will be able to see it. So you can do this in person. You can do this through your program. You can do this on LinkedIn. Take advantage of all these opportunities, network, connect, and you'll be able to take advantage of all those opportunities that are posted and see if one's a good fit.
I second the networking because I both, you know, I applied for so many jobs coming out of grad school. And, you know, I'm back in an organization that I was fortunate enough to work for before I, you know, went back to grad school. And so keeping those connections fresh while I was in grad school definitely helped, you know, people feel comfortable with me interviewing after I graduated. Same thing with the internship, because I did do an internship for Navy Federal Credit Union while I was in my grad program. And so I spent every half of my time, you know, because they're really big on networking. They encourage it, you know, as part of your job. So I spent a lot of days, you know, having one-on-ones and informational interviews with people who were in the organization, you know, to kind of look that way too. And then the third place is LinkedIn was my best friend. I, you know, also Indeed and stuff like that, but mainly LinkedIn was my best friend because there are so many, your connections have, you know of jobs that are available in their organizations. But the organization, like searching for terms like, you know, especially the ones that you're interested in, because I had a few, you know, directions that I was interested in possibly going when I graduated: data analytics, leadership development, training and development, things like that. And I would search for like training specialists, things that would fall inside of the scope of those areas to kind of really understand the jobs that are out there and to keep track. And also to, one thing that I don't know if it's taboo, but also reaching out to people in organizations when you are finding jobs that you're interested in, seeing if you can make connections with people that, you know, people that you know, or people that pop up in the people that you may know section. But just not being afraid to reach out to other people for support is network, absolutely 100% network.
And as you're all talking about that, that reminded me of, I attended the PSYOP, you know, the recent one virtually, and one of the panelists, they were talking about connections. So we all have to-do list, right? But this panel member, they actually mentioned your to-who list. So it's that idea of who do you need to be connected, or who are you most curious about? So that's just what us already mentioned about networking. But the other piece to me is certainly, you know, the internship part is critical. You know, same thing for my experience. I did have to do a full-time internship in healthcare, and I think that's how I ended into that trajectory. But the other piece is, you know, play with the words in terms from technical job titles, because there's a lot out there. I think what's most important is really reading through some of the job descriptions. And if you feel like the job descriptions really don't provide much, then maybe as an IO, like what can you do about those job descriptions? So that's another piece, just to be curious about that. But reflecting on it 12 years ago, certainly there was LinkedIn, but not to an extent that it is now. And I smile because I'm like, oh, is that 12 years ago? I feel like I'm really at that turning point in my life where it's too old, but not too old. So anyway, you know, a lot of platforms and a lot of really word, you know, by mouth, a lot of the jobs that organizations are not even posted yet. So that's where the power of network that, you know, the other folks already mentioned.
And I'll echo what Ryan just said as far as looking at the job description. So I was specifically looking for either data analytics and DEI when I was looking for my internship for this time around. But I looked and I created alerts on a bunch of, so not just LinkedIn, but like on Indeed and all this stuff for organizational development, learning and development, talent development, instructional design, DEI, people analytics, human resources, wellness, risk management, and employee experience. So those were all of the the titles that I put in, and I would just read through the job description, because if I want to do data, all of those roles will require some data. If I want to do DEI, all of those roles will require some level of DEI. And so is there space for me to do that, even if the job title isn't specifically DEI or isn't specifically data analytics? And so reading through those job descriptions. The other piece is I have, a 15-year career in human resources. I went back to my school's career development and career services team when I was applying for the internships right now, because you need a pair of fresh eyes. You're the experts, but your resume is your resume. And so there's a little loss of objectivity with that. So have somebody else, if it's not your career services, just somebody else read through your resume and help you identify, yes, this looks good, or no, take this out. And so I had a 2-page, very dense resume that was not going to work for an application for an internship. It just wasn't. But I also did not have the heart to slash things. Everything on there was very important. So I needed that extra help. And so go through your career services. Through my college, there was also the Handshake, I think was the app that they used, or ways. There was other apps that were specifically to the college, and so they were specifically looking for folks from our program or from our college, our university. So I would also say leverage that. And then in terms of networking, you might not find. So one of the things when I was going into my career, and I heard the word networking, it's well, I have to go and meet the person that has the job opening. And what are the how am I going to meet that person? I want the job right now. I'm 5 degrees away from this one individual. That's one, you can do it that way. You can find the person and you can try to chat with them. The other thing is there's so many different ways. So you have connections either. So for example, if it's a healthcare role, just find somebody else that that also works in healthcare. If it's retail, find somebody else that works. If the size of the organization will also matter, find somebody else who works in an organization with a similar size, right? 5,000 people versus 200 people is a different organization. Your role will be different within those organizations. So find those, what does an L&D person do in an organization with 500 people versus a home organization with 5,000? What is that difference? So find those folks. So find commonalities that aren't necessarily that's the person who has the job that I want, or that is hiring for the job that I want, right? Is network, so that you can get information that's going to help you through the interview process. Okay, I understand what an L&D person does for an organization with only 50 people or for a startup, because I talked to somebody else about this, so that's gonna help me in my interview. So it doesn't matter that I didn't talk to the specific individual or the recruiter that was actually posting that job.
I would say one last thing, if you're not entirely sure, I think all the panelists already gave a lot of really great advice. If you're not entirely sure, you could do basically a reverse search on LinkedIn, look at anybody who graduated from an IO program, and just kind of scroll through whatever titles that they have. That might give you some ideas as well.
Love that. Awesome. Thank you all so much. I am looking forward to, I will go ahead and stop the recording now. And